Welcome back to Tolkien with Friends. Today we're excited to bring back one of our favorite guests, Edith, aka Hobbit Hot Takes on TikTok. Thank you for coming back.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, super excited to get into this one with you.
Yeah, me too.
So, for everybody who doesn't know, today we're finishing up the passing of the Grey Company because of the way the movie chopped it up, where Aragorn summons the army of the dead. We finish up the siege of Gondor, where Denethor officially loses his mind, and Gandalf confronts the Witch King. But mostly, we're covering Shelob's Lair and the choices of Master Samwise. And if for whatever reason you want to plop Return of the King in your DVD player or fire up HBO Max, that means you'll want to start it at about an hour and 51-ish minutes and 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 then stop at like 2 hours and 32 minutes in. So it's like 40 minutes of movie that this section covers.
Wow.
So if we're following along, let's start with Aragorn summoning the army of the dead, because it doesn't take that. It's not a very complicated piece of movie. So this is the army that had sworn to fight for Isildur thousands of years ago. But these people had secretly worshipped Sauron at one point and decided to just sit the war out altogether. So Isildur was very upset about that and cursed them to essentially never rest until they fulfilled their oath. So here we are, thousands of years later, making everyone in the surrounding area feel very creeped out all the time. That's like the vibe. It's just like, in the movie, they kind of allude to it with being like, oh, nobody, like, the creepy shots of the road to the Dimholt, and people just being like, no, nobody comes back that way. But then in the book, you also see like the people in the area on the other side of the mountain, like where it lets out, also avoid that part of the mountain range because they're like creepy stuff over there. So in the movie, to accomplish this, Aragorn talks to some Pirates of the Caribbean looking ghosts. And but in the book, he basically summons an empty room. Like the book says that Aragorn turns to the whispering darkness behind and says, "Let us pass, and then come. I summon you to the Stone of Eric." So he is. They're just kind of getting this creepier feelings behind them. They don't see anything. Gimli is like afraid, and he's very like, I can't believe I'm afraid in this cavey place. Like normally that's my bag, but it's spoopy. And it switches to Gimli's perspective, and he's just talking about how like it never, because it's basically the road goes through the mountains, and it's like a shortcut that Aragorn is taking, because he knows about these black ships that are coming up from the south, and he is summoning this army to help him with that. And the dead don't respond when he summons them inside the mountain, which I guess they don't really respond in the movie at that point either. They just do that creepy laugh, or he like goes ha ha ha, like he pulls out his sword and stuff in the movie, and they have a whole like he's like, what is the line? It's like, the way is shut. This road was built by the dead, and the dead keep it. They do that, and Aragorn pulls out his sword, and that's when they're like, "Oh, okay." But he laughs and doesn't really respond, and then there's just like a million skulls that fall out everywhere. In the book, though, you don't really see anything. You just feel you feel what Gimli's feeling, as far as like how it feels kind of endless, and you just like there's like creepy stuff behind that you can't see, but it's happening. But Legolas can see the ghosts that are following, and he says, "I see shapes of men and of horses, and pale banners like shreds of cloud, and spears like winter thickets on a misty night." And I really like this description of the dead army. It really makes me think that they should have been more like a transparent gray or white in the movies, versus like the green that they go with. Do you guys have any thoughts on like how the ghosts looked, or like that interaction in the films?
I guess I guess they do like green ghostly light with things that are clearly evil,
Mm-hmm.
like Minas Morgul. Is that the one I'm thinking about?
Yeah, but they
So
do like the green light from there. They also do it in like the Dead Marshes. There's like some green stuff when Frodo falls into the water in the movie.
yeah,
Peter's a fan of green,
Yeah. I
for
mean, like, I
sure.
guess it's interesting that they did something different, but you're also like, why is it different? And
Mm-hmm.
if that's not exactly how they were described in the book, I'd be interested to hear why they chose the green tint.
Yeah, I've never seen any explanation of that. Like, I remember in the appendices of the movie them talking about like how Pirates of the like Curse of the Black Pearl had come out right before theirs, and so they were kind of sad that they had a similar design of like the zombie looking guys. Yeah, it's like super similar. Um and but they just like obviously didn't really have time to change it at that point. But yeah, it's funny that it's like um I don't know, they do look super similar. Maybe that was just the early 2000s ghosty vibes. I don't know. But yeah, I really like the idea of them being almost like, like Legolas can only see them and almost like shadows of people rather than like sickly green.
I guess the trouble is that Tolkien has these great passages with this fear that you can't see, and actually the same happens
I
in Shelob's
know.
Lair. And if you can't see anything, that's really hard to put in a movie.
Depict it. Yeah. I know.
It's just like a
And I
feeling.
and I almost think that later when in the movie they use the ghosts to really like go for it in on the Pelennor fields, it just like once Aragorn gets there, the ghosts like take over the whole shebang. And obviously that's probably easier to see, rather than like a gray or a white
Mm.
that might blend in more or look more like a storm or something. I don't know. So maybe that has something to do with it, but I do like the shreds of cloud wording
Mm.
and spears like winter thickets on a misty night. It's nice.
It's spooky. It's whimsical
Yeah.
and spooky.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's really like the main thing. Not a lot happens at that point with the army of the dead. There's like this whole thing with the stone of Eric, but it's like who cares? Like it's fine to not do that, like where because he asked them to follow them and then they go to the stone, which is kind of like this big round thing that was plopped there, I think, by Isildur. And everybody kind of avoids that area anyway because of the ghost, and then that's when he's like, fight with me, and they're like, or like, why did you come? And they're like, to fulfill our oath so we can have peace, that kind of thing. So kind of unnecessary if they, yeah, but they do kind of say it when they come out of the mountain. Then he says we will fight, and then you see the black ships. So they just kind of shorten that up, but then add like a crazy amount of skulls, which I'm just like, who are these skulls from is the question. Like, we've established that nobody goes this way. Is this all of your skulls? Did somebody come this way at one point and you just like destroy? Where are the skulls coming from? It's a lot of skulls. But Peter being Peter, he added skulls. So after this point, when we see Aragorn say, where the ship's guys are like, you and whose army? Aragorn, this army. Go cue ghosts. The movie cuts back to Minas Tirith for a few minutes, but I kind of want to like get to the Minas Tirith part at the end. I think now we should check back in on Frodo and Sam because that's like the meat of it,
Mm-hmm.
So in the movie, we have Frodo entering Shelob's lair with Gollum, while Sam is trying to make his way down the stairs until he finds the limbus bread that Gollum had, our beautiful framing scene. um, and while this makes Sam, like I get it. Like Sam, it's kind of cinematic to have Sam come and like rescue Frodo at the end of the scene here, but like they go into the tunnel together, and
No,
it's
it's a whole thing.
and we'll talk about Sam's conflict once he believes Frodo to be dead, and just him lamenting the fact that he, he tries to make the decision to move on, or not move on, but like to complete the quest without Frodo, and he really is. But then he realizes the orcs see Frodo, and he is so upset because he's like, my place was at Frodo's side the whole time. What am I doing? And so like they obviously don't go into that in the movie because he leaves Frodo's side, but I think it is pretty key to Sam as a person.
I was so mad because I went to check the chapter titles of the DVDs today, and like there's a chapter titled "The Choices of Master Samwise," but where are the choices? It's just
None.
And it's
the choice to go back up the stairs. I don't know.
Like I got it.
Yeah. Well,
okay. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Well, let's get into it. So, in the movie, Sam turns around, and meanwhile we see, Frodo dealing with going into Shelob's lair, and like we were just talking about, Shelob's lair, I think, has some of the best descriptive writing. It's so creepy and spooky, and it really sounds awful. And so in the movie, Frodo walks in, he's by himself, Gollum goes ahead, and it's like really cluttered. There's like corpses and webs everywhere. But in the book, it's like a relatively clear path. It's so wide that Frodo and Sam can't hold hands and touch the sides at the same time. They try, but they want to stay close to each other, but they're realizing that there's multiple passages off of it, and it's complete darkness. And they do a comparison to Moria's darkness, but then in Moria they knew it had like an airier feeling, like a more cavernous, but in here they feel there's like the air is dead, like there's no, like if you speak the sound dies in your mouth, like it's stuffy and like hot even. So basically we learned that like the shape of this tunnel it's like Shelob's main tunnel, like this is formed by her massive icky body, and it's been carved out by her. And so while they do occasionally like brush past something, which I think could be implied to be like a hanging corpse or something, I think the key features of Shelob's lair are the impenetrable darkness, the heaviness of the air, and the horrible smell. Like as soon as they walk up to it, like I think they do it briefly in the movie where Frodo's like, "What's that smell?" And he's like, "Oh, orc filth." Gollum tries to make an excuse for it, but in the book, Sam is like, "Phew, like how did you go through this before? This is rank." But they're starting to see like that there's several passages along the main way, and our hobbits pass a particular path. The description is so visceral, and it's like it leans into that stench thing that I just said. So it reads, "At length, Frodo, groping along the left-hand wall, came suddenly to a void. Almost he fell sideways into the emptiness. Here was some opening in the rock far wider than any they had yet passed, and out of it came a reek so foul, and a sense of lurking malice so intense, that Frodo reeled, and at that moment Sam too lurched and fell forwards." They're like gagging and falling over themselves because this is so stanky.
Yeah, it's also like there's an evil that makes it difficult for them to move past this opening. It's so like full-bodied.
Yeah, and Shelob is chilling in there, in which they realize in a second, and have to kind of get away from her. And you can totally see how Gollum has, like, set them up, Like, later we'll learn officially how, when Tolkien gives us a description about Shelob and how, but also how Gollum had, snuck away and basically, like, coordinated the whole thing with her. I don't really know how that conversation goes because we never, like, actually hear her talk. But, she was, like, waiting for them, And, I was double checking, and, like, the words that Frodo says in Elvish are right. I did think it was funny that it's supposed to say, like, it's supposed to sound like it's not coming from him, like a voice that's, like, calmer and, like, unbothered. But he definitely sounds bothered when, he's like when he does it. And so, Frodo has to deal with Shelob by himself, essentially, and he has to cut himself out of the cobweb, like the giant web that he gets stuck in. He's, like, somehow, like, smack dab in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Sure. But in the book, it's Frodo and Sam. He has kind of made Shelob back off with the File of Galadriel and Sting. She's kind of like, the fuck is this, And she's like, don't worry, I'll go around. And so Frodo and Sam have time to, like, cut out a way with the web with Sting, because Sam's sword doesn't work. Only Sting, only, like, an Elvish blade will cut that out. And so once Frodo and Sam make their escape from the tunnel, is when they're separated in the book, rather than way back on the stairs. Frodo runs ahead because he's, like, so ready to get out of there. He's like, we're almost there. Let's go, go, go. And, but Sam is, like, feeling really apprehensive. He's like, something isn't right. And when he finally, like, turns to follow him, he puts down the File of Galadriel, and which is basically what Shelob was waiting for. She makes her move, gets between Frodo and Sam, and when Sam tries to catch up with Frodo is when Gollum decides to reappear. And so Sam is the one that has to fight Gollum, not Frodo, which makes a lot more sense to me, like, especially after all of the talking we've done about the promise that Gollum has made to protect Frodo. I don't think he would have ever really been able to. I think still he would have been held to that. I think it makes sense in Mount Doom when he attacks him, because I think everyone would probably just lose their mind that close to the fire, But here, I think he's still being held by the promise, and he attacks Sam, and he's like, and also they have beef anyway. So Sam has to fight Gollum, and by the time Gollum decides to run away, he doesn't get killed because Sam's like, I gotta deal with Frodo. But Frodo has already been stung by Shelob. And, there is a passage here before what Sam does next. Tolkien gives, like, a bit of backstory on Shelob, which I think is interesting. It's, like, vague and also enough information, I feel like. He talks about how he calls her an evil thing in spider form, which, cool. He kind of implies that Shelob is from the First Age. It says that she was flying from the ruin of Beleriand, which is, like, that happens at the end of the First Age. And that she's the last child of Ungoliant to trouble the unhappy world. And so, if everyone can recall, Ungoliant is the big spider but also an evil thing in spider form, but Shelob's mama, who sucks the light out of the two trees in Valinor, thanks Morgoth, and he promises her, like, oh yeah, you'll be able to eat as much as you want, because the thing with these spider creatures they are just hungry always. And so she sucks the light out of the two trees, and she tries to attack Melkor too, because she wants to eat the Silmarils, but he doesn't let her. So yeah, just a thing to know about these spiders is they be hungry. And
They're big.
Sauron, yeah, very large. And I think I'm gonna talk a little bit more about how large she is in a second. But Sauron knew she was there and referred to her as his cat, though she served him not. But basically, he would he let her just hang out there because it worked out for him, even though she'd been there longer than him. She'd been there longer than, she'd been there since before Barad-dûr was built, and before he probably was eyeing it as his spot. But he's like, you know what, this works. You guard this way. I'll send you prisoners sometimes, or just let you eat my orcs. I have plenty. It's cool. And she's she probably doesn't even think about him. You know what I mean? She's just there always.
Mm-hmm.
I also think it's interesting that he says that Gollum had worshipped her, and like we talked about, set this whole thing up for her to attack Frodo, but that Gollum had bowed before her and stuff. I'm wow.
Yeah, I thought that description was really interesting, and also there was a sentence that was something like, "But her lust was not his lust."
Oh yeah,
because Gollum wants the ring bar. Shelob just wants to eat everything until she doesn't fit in the mountain. I thought that was cool.
I know. The way that he put it, she only desired death for all others, like a girl boss, and for herself, a life alone, swollen till the mountains could no longer hold her up, and the darkness could no longer contain her. I mean, it's a big dream.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big goal. Literally.
She wants it all.
Yeah. She wants it all and nothing at the same time. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
But, Shelob, you do you at this point.
Or
nobody to tell you otherwise. So, now we get to the choices of Master Samwise. So, when Sam, just to comment on her size one more time, because I hadn't really thought about it before, but she's so large. And I feel like in the movie, she's not big enough, So Sam in the movie is lying on his back when he stabs Shelob. And, it's it's probably a good stab. But in the book, he's so he does get under her and he slashes her belly, and it mentions that is one of her softest spots, but it's not really a problem for her because she's just old and nasty. The problem is the way that Shelob tries to take care of Sam. So he is able to stand fully upright while under her. And that's crazy. And he knows that she's about to squash him. And so what he does is he holds Sting up fully, and then she brings all of her weight down on it. So it's an even further way for it to go, and that is what really messes her up because of the force that she brought down upon her own, enemy, I guess.
And it's so cool and dramatic.
I know, it's crazy. I'm like, man, she is so big. She is so freaking huge. Not just around, but she's tall. I mean, Sam and Frodo. I mean, they're less than 4 feet tall, but still,
Yeah, and a hobbit and a sword.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, a shorter person could definitely walk under her if she's fully scuttling around. I just feel like I keep going like this with my arms to be a spider.
You look exactly like Shelob. We get it. So
I also want to eat everything.
Yeah.
and it says that she's basically never known such anguish, and that's a lot of anguish. I would think is if you've been around for 3, 6, thousands of years at that point. But also she does seem to keep to herself more or less. So I don't know. Seems like a pretty big owie. And so that's when she's like, okay, fuck this. I am gonna kill you for real this time. I'm not gonna sting you to eat you later. I'm gonna sting you to kill you. You know, she's really pissed. But then Sam uses the Phial of Galadriel, and he also has a thing where he says words that like he doesn't know where they're coming from. He speaks Elvish, but it's when he like speaks his own thing where he's like, you know, screw you, lady. Like when he says, you know, puts it in his own words is when it like really lights up, which I thought was interesting. And that's kind of the end of Shelob in our tale, but it is implied that like not really the end of Shelob, but Shelob is like, no, I'm gonna go now. I'm gonna go like nurse my wounds and, you know, deal with that. No more Frodo and Sam for her, basically. Too
So
much.
she's not dead?
No. She crawls back into a hole to nurse her wounds. And bother. Who knows? I mean, it's interesting because her life is clearly not tied to evil the way that like other things seem to be. You know, like all of Mordor crashes down. So maybe she gets trapped in that at the end of the Third Age, but she doesn't trouble us in our tale after this. But Prob's not dead. Don't know what it would take to really kill Shelob. Maybe the mountain crushing her. Maybe, you know what? I would say that's kind of reaching her dreams. The mountain can't contain her anymore.
Careful what you wish for.
I know. So here is, you know, when Sam is left with Frodo, he believes he's dead, and I feel like Sean Astin delivers those, like, it's obviously shorter, but like the way he delivers, like, you know, don't go where I can't follow. So good.
I'm glad they kept that line.
Me too. I would have been really upset if they didn't. Because it's so, I mean, it's like, it's an excellent line. Why would you want to cut it? And Sean delivers it so beautifully. And like the orcs show up pretty quickly after that, and so that Sam just has to hide, and we don't, and obviously they're doing that so like we don't see Sam take the ring, and so we're like, the audience is supposed to be like, oh no, like Frodo captured, it's over, you know, for people that don't know. If you don't know, then it's probably like, oh shit, stressful. But in the book, Sam is like, he has more time with Frodo, and he's really at a loss about what to do, you know, believing that Frodo is dead. I mean, it's like, his first thought, though, I should note, is like kicking Gollum's ass, which I get it. And, you know, he's like wrestling with himself about, does he keep going? Does he just stay here with Frodo? You know, what would it mean if he kept you know, like taking the ring? That seems crazy, you know. Edith, do you have any other? I'm sure that you have more thoughts on this, so I'm gonna let you take this one.
Oh, for fuck's sake! It's my favorite chapter, and like sometimes if I need to feel something, I just read Sam's whole monologue scene over Frodo's body, and I think it's so good the way that he shows Sam's thinking and how he he's slowly coming towards the conclusion that he has to take the ring, and it's just so good to me. And like I guess like what they do in the films, like apart from separating Sam and Frodo, I guess like doing the spider horror sequence and having it at that, it's not bad in the movie, but because this is an amazing sequence and scene in the book, I'm just upset that it's not in the movie, because I think this is like the moment when Sam becomes the hero. And like when they're in Shelob's lair, there are moments that are inside Sam's head and inside Frodo's head, and then as soon as Frodo runs ahead of Sam, when he sees freedom, the narrator stays with Sam from that point on until the end of the book.
I love it when we're in Sam's head. I think it's just the sweetest place to be,
Yeah.
you know. He really does debate with himself, and it's funny because like we always think about Gollum being the one talking to himself, but
Yeah.
there is like answers and questions back and forth, and it's obviously only Sam, you know. He's thinking about like, what am I to do? And he cried again, and now he seemed plainly to know the hard answer. See it through. Another lonely journey, and the worst. What? Me? Alone? Go to the crack of doom and all? What, me? Take the ring from him? The council gave it to him. But the answer came at once. The council gave him companions, so that the errand should not fail. And you're the last of all the company. The errand must not fail. And he's like, ugh, like, how am I the last one? It's so, it's ridiculous. I'm sure to go wrong. And it's not for me to go taking the ring, putting myself forward. But you haven't put yourself forward. You've been put forward. And as for not being the right and proper person, why Mr. Frodo wasn't. And as you might say, nor Mr. Bilbo. They didn't choose themselves. And so he's like, it's like a lot of back and forth with himself before finally deciding to take it. And he even apologizes to Frodo for having to leave him and for taking not only the ring, but he's like, okay, I have to take the file because I'm pretty sure I'm going to need that, and I'm sorry I have to take Sting too, but I'll leave you with mine. It's just so precious, and I understand, like, time, they, I don't know, there's other things that I would suggest they cut so that they can leave stuff like this in, but but they obviously cut some things for time, and but I think that there could have been more fumbling that Sam, at least, resolving to go on, because then we see him, he's struggling to take these steps away from Frodo.
Yeah.
And I think it's partially like he's carrying the ring for the first time, and that's hard. But also I don't think he wants to leave Frodo, like,
It says something
all.
like it goes against the grain of his being to go on alone. And I think another beautiful thing about it is that Sam has to, go through this decision-making process on his own in this dark place. And he has to decide that he's worthy of taking the ring, but because he's humble and all. But I think what helps it is that it would be more selfish not to take the ring, like to let your own insecurities like get in the way of doing the important quests.
Yeah, I think it says a lot about, I think we talk about this a lot, but I'm never gonna not talk about it, but like the way that whenever you become a ring bearer, the moment, like how you are in that moment, I think dictates a lot about how the ring affects you. And we are literally in Mordor at this point. And I know that it's later, Sam does get like a vision of what he might do with the ring, but even then he's able to like brush it off and be like, no, that's not what I'm into. I don't want slaves, I don't want people to be gardening for me, I want to do it. Which, precious baby. But he not only like his reluctance, but his putting Frodo first in this, I think has a lot to do with how Sam, even in like the last leg of the quest, when he has to take the ring, and he doesn't even keep it for very long, but he does for a little bit, I think is why he is even able to give it back to Frodo later.
For sure.
Because that's not easy to do. Like, Isildur couldn't even throw it in the trash at, like, 5 minutes after getting it. So the fact that Sam is able to be like, okay, like, he gives it back.
Yeah, because he's got something more important, and that's Frodo.
Yeah. It's Frodo! Damn it! I know. There is a part. Oh, I wrote it down. But when he is just thinking about that, when he is fighting Shelob, the way that Tolkien describes it. Oh,
is it the fallen maid bit?
Yes. No onslaught more fierce was ever seen in the savage world of beasts, where some desperate small creature armed with little teeth alone will spring upon a tower of horn and hide that stands above its fallen mate.
I know.
I mean, it's like, what is love?
Oh.
Baby, don't hurt me. Yeah, it's just, I mean, he is obviously so fiercely feeling for Frodo, throughout all of this, even when they're in the dark, and like trying to hold hands, but they're keep kind of losing each other, but then Sam shrinks back to Frodo. Like, he would rather stick next to Frodo than try to figure out, like, if, because they don't want to get separated. And so, it is super duper hard for when Sam feels like he has to be separated from him. But as we know, the orcs show up literally just as he starts to walk away. And in that moment, he puts on the ring, like, without even kind of really thinking about it. He just needs to get away, but there's nowhere to go. And I did think that the description that they used was really interesting, and I want to see what you all think about how it matches up with the way the movie presents wearing the ring, like the way they do the different effects. So it says, the world changed, and a single moment of time was filled with an hour of thought. At once he was aware that hearing was sharpened, while sight was dimmed, but otherwise than in Shelob's lair. All things about him now were dark, but vague, while he himself was there in a grey, hazy world, alone, like a small black solid rock, and the ring, weighing down his left hand, was like an orb of hot gold. He did not feel invisible at all, but horribly and uniquely visible, and he knew that somewhere an eye was searching for him.
When I read that today, I actually thought that they probably took inspiration from that for when Frodo's wearing the ring. These shadowy worlds.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely do the eye thing a lot.
Yeah.
But like the way that it's always feels like super windy, like windswept, and like unclear when he's wearing the ring, which is interesting. I mean, I guess that's one way to do it, and probably effects wise maybe easier to do than to actually like turn down the I don't know with everything like dim around him, but he can hear really well. Like, he can hear the crack of stone and the murmur of waterfall far off in Morgul Vale, and he's hearing all these things, which really throws him off later when he's listening to the orcs and trying to follow them once they pick up Frodo. And he even, like, right at the end, he gets in this passageway with them, and he thinks that he's, like, right behind them, and he's obviously about to make a stand and like yells something, but then he realizes that they're like super far away, and so he's like hoofing it to try to make it to the gate, but then it shuts right in front of him, and that's where Two Towers ends, is with Sam not being able to catch up with these orcs.
And he's just found out that Frodo is alive after all.
Yes, and he feels really stupid, and I feel really bad for him, because he's like, how does he say it? Like, he should have trusted his heart, not his head, because his head is like the worst of him or something.
Yeah.
I know. I'm like, why do you talk like this to yourself, Sam? I feel like the gaffer treats you badly, because you're great. You're amazing. But it's really interesting when he is listening to, these orcs. I feel like the only other time that we really get a long conversation between orcs is when we're with Pippin, when he's captured by the Uruk-hai. And so we see it again here, but we got Mordor orcs. And it's there was like a statement in it that made me think about how little we kind of know about orcs in Tolkien in general, but like particularly in here. There's a part there are these two orcs that he's following, Gorbag and Shagrat. There's multiple, but these two are the ones that he's like listening in on, that are obviously the ones that are like leaders of both of their little companies. And they're talking about what they will do after the war if Sauron wins. And Gorbag, they're talking about going off and like, if we win, we'll go off and we'll find a few trusty lads, and we'll go somewhere where there's good loot, nice and handy, and no big bosses. And Shagrat is like, like old times. I'm just like, all right, reminiscing about when there maybe wasn't a Sauron. Kind of interested to see if they use this at all for the Rings of Power orcs. Like orcs with no boss, just doing orc things, What is like peak existence for an orc?
I mean, would that be a bit like the orcs in The Hobbit that are just living in the mountain and looting?
Yeah.
Like they're going on a raid with the wolves.
Just, chilling, eating, and so on. But there's something, but they go back and forth and they're talking, but Gorbag isn't convinced. It's funny because Gorbag is the one that, like, suggests what they would do if they win, but he's also, like, not convinced that Sauron has the war in the bag, and how Sauron and the Nazgul are worried that something that has, like, nearly slipped past them. And because Shagrat, that's like something that Shagrat says, that they're worried that like something slipped or something nearly slipped, and Gorbag is like, I say something has slipped and we've got to look out, always poor Uruks to put slips right, and small thanks, but don't forget the enemies don't love us any more than they love him, meaning Sauron, and if they get topsides on him, we're done too. And something about this stood out to me. It made me think that it's like, I know that generally we just kind of think of orcs as like inherently evil, but something about this passage gives me the impression that these guys seem to feel more like stuck between a rock and a hard place. Like they were kind of born to be minions in a way, and they clearly have a system set up for them to be nasty and warlike. I mean, like they've got Sauron telling them what to do all the time, but this kind of makes me think that there's more to them, like this is more like out of survival at this point than anything. They don't seem to particularly care about Sauron. They don't care if he wins or loses or whatever, but they're just worried that like if the rest of the world hates them, then like, what else are they supposed to do? So obviously they're gonna go along with Sauron's thing, even though that sucks as well. And it just makes me think like, if everyone's, I started like a whole debate in this separate chat in the Discord about it, or it just makes me think like, if everyone's memories were wiped like at that moment and they were like, what are we doing here, and they all had to start over, I feel like orcs could just be like any other people at this point, or maybe I just like to think so, but I think that there is like an orc culture. I think that they clearly have autonomy, and they're clearly not just like doing whatever they're told, because they obviously deviate all the time from plans, and are kind of looking out for themselves. And obviously it's not, Tolkien talks about how their language is kind of gross, and like they're very selfish and they're very warlike, and it's almost like, but I feel like a lot of those things are learned.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you took a baby orc, which is implied that there would be, because Tolkien in a letter said that there would be female orcs, but like this is like a war story, so he didn't like go there, but like if you had a baby orc and just like plot, just kind of like, or if it wiped everyone's memories, I don't know. I feel like there's kind of hope for orcs in a way, if you want to put it like that.
Yeah, I feel like it's left a bit vague.
Yeah, and
because like these orcs read like just people that don't like their jobs, and it's Monday again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is how it reads. And one thing that I was talking to Nick, who I think his username is like fornost42 on TikTok, if anybody is going to follow Nick. But he was saying to me that I think there's a letter where Tolkien was toying with the idea of maybe orcs are more like a derivative of men rather than like ruined elves. Because of the whole, like, I think the whole mortality thing is an issue, but also I don't think he ever, like, while in the Silmarillion they did choose to have Melkor having ruined orcs be the, or ruined elves be the first orcs, I don't think he ever really liked that answer. I really think that there's like a part of him, especially when you think about like the way he treats Gollum and when he has Sam thinking things about like the Haradrim, about like would they not have rather stayed at home in peace. I think there is like all these little signals of like Tolkien wanting to play with more like morally ambiguous characters and not having so many that are just like straight up good or straight up evil. I think Sauron is even kind of complicated in that way. But and like the bigger narrative for like Lord of the Rings, it's not like an easy place to explore that, but I feel like it's there. I feel like the idea is there.
I think just the fact that Tolkien went through so many options for where orcs come from, or what are they like, or do they have free will and all that. I think just that shows that he wasn't sure how he wanted them to be or how they work in the narrative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's hard to like, because I don't think any of the characters that he makes are, you know, even like the Silmarillion or the gods, like when you even have people or like characters like Melkor and Sauron, like they're not evil in the beginning. It's just something, it's like something that they fall into, you know what I mean, because of the way that they're, I don't know, I don't think it's always a given that they're gonna be evil no matter what, you know. It's just kind of how the story played out. And I feel like that's kind of the same thing with orcs, like, but again, there's so many of them, and it's like it's definitely hard to like have this like a whole group that is just like you can just kill off without any kind of concern. And like, and I get why it's like that. Like Sauron doesn't care about them, you know, so he uses them like that. But there are things, I think it's like either Gandalf or Aragorn in Two Towers that said that they pity Sauron's slaves, and I would say that would go for orcs. So I think that they're even thinking about it in this way, you know, but like orcs having Sauron as like their boss, and he's kind of like set, like at any workplace, the boss kind of sets the example, right? Like it makes me think about how when Sauron was given the opportunity to repent after the whole Morgoth thing, he didn't. And one thing that I was talking about with, I think it was Chris from the Soul Hero, we were talking about how because, and we know that Sauron judges all hearts by, you know, his own things about like lust for power and that kind of thing. And I feel like when he was given that chance to repent, he was probably like, I have done so many horrible things, there's no way that they're not just gonna like rip me to pieces, you know what I mean? Like he couldn't even fathom the way that the Valar might reprimand him, but it's like, dude, they're just gonna probably put you in the void for a big time out. That's all they ever do to Melkor, and he's worse than you, so it's okay. And they even like, give Melkor a second chance, so I feel like he probably would have had a big time out. Probably could have come back, but he doesn't give them that opportunity, and so continues to do bad things because I don't know. It's sad. So that kind of reminds me of this passage where these guys are talking, where they're basically like, well, the rest of Middle Earth doesn't like us, so what are we like? There's no way that could change, you know. And I do think it would be hard. It would be probably a generational thing, you know? But I feel like someone like Aragorn would try. Do you know what I mean? To like let the orcs just like they'd probably just be like, just go somewhere else. Just don't bother anybody. Quit, you know,
Yeah, he might
doing
try.
whatever. Like I just feel like he would.
Yeah.
But we'll never know because orcs don't really give him a chance.
I think from just a movie viewer's perspective, I think the orcs do seem like they have no autonomy, that they are beyond saving, and that they are just vessels of evil to help the big baddies do their little work.
Yeah.
And that they're just like ants, basically, for the service of Sauron.
Yeah.
Saruman. So
Yeah, I think that is
it's
the
interesting
impression
to
it's
hear those other
given.
details about them.
Yeah, I think that there's just more there that just doesn't get, it definitely doesn't get played out in the movie. But it reminds me also of like Gollum. There's like so many things about him that don't get to be explored. And I think that's even them like trying to show him as morally ambiguous, but I think it's like less so um uh than it could have been. But you know, the orcs, and also I think Peter kind of gets himself in trouble when he makes these battles so freaking huge all the time.
How come?
There is no, you have to murder them all. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no way to win without just like getting rid of a huge amount of them. So they are treated like ants. But I think, I'm just saying, like, little thought. I think there's a little bit more to the orcs than movies would lead you to believe. And I'm not saying that they're like inherently good or anything. I'm just saying that they're, you know, kind of products of their situation in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not like an orc stan or anything. I'm just saying that I do think that there is more nuance to Tolkien and that gets lost in the movies. I think that's the whole point of this.
Yeah.
Just in general. But is there any other thoughts that you had about the choices of Master Samwise or Shelob's Lair? Because we still have a little bit of Minas Tirith to get to, but I want to make sure that we fully cover off on Sam.
I had some thoughts. I wrote some down. When I read these chapters again today, I wanted to follow Sting and the file of Galadriel, because I think Sting changing hands in Shelob's lair is like an important moment for Sam and Frodo. So
yeah, that's true. So just to backtrack a little bit, so when does he hand him Sting? Because I know he gives him the file in the Shelob's lair when he's cutting the web.
When Sam has thrown Gollum off, and he comes back to Frodo, who has been stung by Shelob, Sting has fallen to the ground, and Sam picks it up. And at first, he's got his own sword, and he's got Sting. He's got a sword in both hands. The file is in his pocket, and then I think he stabs Shelob like in the eye or something. But then before,
and he cuts off her claw, one of her claws.
Yes, but then before Sam does the whole stabbing upwards and Shelob bringing herself down on Sting, Sam drops his own sword and takes Sting with both hands. And I, to me, I've got a whole thing about this, but to me, that's Sam taking up the mantle of the hero because Frodo is incapacitated, and like Sam's journey up to this point has been to get the confidence and courage that he needs to become the hero at this point, to take over from Frodo. And like, even when they reunite and Sam gives Sting and the ring back, Frodo's only task is to keep walking towards the mountain, because he's all he can do is like bear the ring. So so it's like Sam's job to get him there. And I think like carrying the ring over the border to Mordor is such an important moment for Sam, which is not at all in the movies.
Yeah, we don't even know that he has it. It's just kind of like, surprise, they don't have the ring. It's great. Like, you know, I had it the whole time. But yeah, I agree. I think that this is where you definitely see a shift in that dynamic. You know, we've talked about how Frodo, especially with Gollum in the book, has really tried to show Sam, you know, like, we got to be nice to Gollum. You know, he's definitely like the leader of the pack. You know, the way he speaks to Faramir, and really, I think, gains Faramir's trust pretty quickly. And obviously, Faramir gains Sam's trust pretty quickly too. But yeah, this is a moment where I think things do change for Frodo. I mean, things have been not great. But now it's like they are, you kind of see the Papa Bear part come out of Sam when he finally goes back, and it's like, oh, I should never have left your side. But we'll see later, you know, when they're in the tower and Sam really has to figure out, like, how do we get out of here, you know. Sam starts making more decisions for how they can navigate to the mountain. And I think that's, you know, Sam, he is just so wonderful. He is such a great person, and he is always trying to do what's best for Frodo, you know. And Frodo at this point is gonna, from now on, I think, is gonna be, I mean, he's spent in a lot of ways, you know, but I feel like Sam really draws his strength from his love for Frodo and trying to protect him, you know. I feel like there are a lot of people like that, where it's like, you are tired and you are done, but you still have tasks to do. And I think that's true for both of them, but for Frodo, I think it's more abstract now. It's like saving the world, you know what I mean? Like, he knows that he has to do this thing in order to save all of his friends, but it's not like so connected to them, you know. Like, but for Sam, it's like, this, I get Frodo to, you know what I mean, I save Frodo.
Yeah, and for Frodo it's very internal, like, it's just him and the ring, and Sam has to take charge of the external, and like, not just make food but make the decisions for both of them.
Yeah, and it's, I'll be interested to explore that more as we get, you know, through Mordor with these two, and how they do that in the movie. But yeah, I think this is moment one for Sam, where, you know, things start changing for the dynamic between these two. And I always think, and I think this is also, I don't know, maybe where Frodo realize, like, we already know that he loves Sam, you know. He's already called him like his dearest hobbit, you know, when he was talking about Sam, like, what hope is there that we ever shall complete this task. And it's funny because it's like, Sam doesn't need hope in that way, he just needs Frodo.
Yeah.
You know, like, as long as Frodo's there, he's got a motivation. But Frodo, that's it's slowly failing, you know, as far as keeping up spirits, you know, which, who can blame him? Yeah. And so I think that this is like, so we've got like a physical thing that happens to Frodo that's pretty rough. And then I think once he takes the ring back, things are just gonna get harder.
Yeah.
And and it's just, it's crazy to think that Frodo was trying to cross the Anduin and get through and go do this by himself.
Yeah, that would have gone differently.
That would not have worked. I mean, even if Gollum did help him get this far, he would have been eaten.
Yeah.
We just saw, like, so, yeah. That was your bad, Frodo. Sam forever.
It needs his Sam.
Mm-hmm.
I have a random question. I don't want to
Right.
like go on too much of a tangent because I do want to talk about Boromir's crazy dad. But where or who had Sting before Bilbo?
So Bilbo found it, as well as Gandalf finds his sword, Orcris, and I can't remember Thorin's sword, but it's his Orcris brother sword. They find that in a troll horde in The Hobbit. When they defeat the trolls, and then they're like, well, if there are trolls here, then maybe they had stuff. So they go find their stuff and kind of see if anything's good, and they find those 3 swords and they're all supposed to glow blue. They're all like these fancy elven swords. And I think, but like
The
Bilbo,
ones that
I
get
feel
turned to
like,
stone.
yeah, those
Okay.
trolls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
So
yep,
they
yep.
had all this good stuff, and they actually bury some of the gold, and that's some of the gold that like Bilbo ends up living off of later. But yeah, he gets it from there. And I think a lot of people like to think that, along with the other fancy swords, that Bilbo's was probably made in Gondolin as well. With, in the First Age, when elves were really doing the most as far as making things. And I think I was joking with somebody about how, because they were like calling Sting like a letter opener for an elf, and I'm like, well, it's probably bigger than that. Like, it's child size. But I was like, but why would they make a letter opener that can detect if orcs are nearby? But then it was like, have you seen the gates to Gondolin? They're like so extra. So elves be extra in the First Age. So they're probably making everything like, like everywhere they lived, not everywhere, but a lot of the places they lived were all fortresses. They're all like hunkering down to stay out of so Morgoth can't get to them, and making pretty things at the same time.
They did the most. Got it.
Yeah. That's elves.
That's
for
elves
ya.
for you.
Because by the Third Age, a lot of them are leaving Middle Earth. The ones that are still there, just kind of like chilling. I mean, you've got folks like Galadriel and Elrond who are still like concerned about the state of the world, but for the most part, they know that their part to play is over.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Sting has a mysterious background, but it's definitely elvish, and somehow ended up in a troll horde about 60 years before this. And who knows for how long it was with them, So I'm sure somebody has a good thought, like a theory somewhere about the travels of Sting. But that's how it ends up with Bilbo. Just lucky chance, if chance you want to call it.
Yeah.
Anna, do you have any other thoughts about this section?
Nope. Let's talk about Boromir's crazy dad.
Okay, because he be cray.
Because he be wildin'.
Yeah, so in this part, we see Denethor. So he had previously, on the last time, we saw Denethor sending Faramir away to be like, you need to go protect Osgiliath. And Gandalf is like, Faramir, your dad loves you. He'll remember it before the end. And Faramir's like, yeah, fucking right. And obviously, doesn't go great, because, you have the Witch King leading the army of Mordor to come kick their booties. So Gandalf and some more soldiers, like at the very last second, Denethor sends some cavalry members, including like Prince Imrahil from the south, to go help Faramir and his army. And Gandalf does the same thing with the light, with that we see him do earlier in the movie. He does that again and like gets the Nazgul to back off for a minute because they're not ready for that. And Prince Imrahil is the one who carries Faramir into the city. But in the movie, they just have Faramir. He's like stuck to his horse and he's like being dragged, but basically same. He was hit by a poison dart. He is not looking too good. Denethor is just like, he's dead. It's the end of my line. Like, in the book, he gives Faramir a little bit more time because he assumes that he's dying. And he's like, I'm just going to sit here and wait and see if he says anything before he dies. And but ultimately, I feel like Denethor is pretty book accurate. I mean, like, I tried to make an argument previously that he was, like, chiller, but he's crazy. And I think it's implied that he checked the Palantir at one point during the Siege of Gondor, and and I'm sure that Sauron told him, like, dude, you're so fucked. Like, there's no out for you, and so he believes it, which is wrong.
Yeah.
Why would you listen to Sauron? He's a big fat liar. So he basically loses all hope. I'm pretty sure that Denethor has been like a little crazy since his wife died. So now Boromir's gone. He does say that he has, like, acts like he has some remorse. He talks about how it's on page 805. Let's pull it out. But basically, he feels bad for sending Faramir to Osgiliath. And I'm like, wow, should have thought about that earlier. I sent my son forth, unthanked, unblessed, out into needless peril, and here he lies with poison in his veins. Nay, whatever may now betide in war, my line too is ending. Even the house of the stewards has failed. And I'm like, wow. I mean, yeah, it is your fault, but he's not even dead yet, so...
And he's not even using his remorse to make it better. He's just using his remorse as fuel to his fire.
He makes everything about him. Like, everything. Like, even when he's talking to Gandalf and Pippin is, like, afraid that, he thinks that, Pippin is like, oh my god, because Gandalf implies that, there's, like, they're being led by somebody terrible, and he's like, Pippin is like, oh my gosh, like, the Dark Lord himself is coming, and Denethor is like, no, he will not come, save only to triumph over me when all is won. He uses others as his weapons. So do all great lords, if they are wise, Master Halfling. Or why should I sit here in my tower and think and watch and wait, spending even my sons? For I can still wield a brand. He stood up and cast open his long black cloak, and behold, he was clad in mail beneath and girt. And I'm like, dude, so you're dressed for battle, and you're sitting there up in your tower being a total douche. Like, why even dress up, but Gandalf definitely teases him about it later, because he's like, he says however that may be, the captain of despair does not press forward yet. He rules rather according to the wisdom that you have just spoken, from the rear, driving his slaves in madness on before. I'm like, yeah, Denethor, you're following the model of the Witch King. Good job. Yeah, it's all
Solid
about
choice.
Denethor always. But I think we know a lot of men like that.
And he's even like, oh, Sauron will triumph over me. Like, Sauron doesn't even care about you, dude.
He's just trying to get rid of everybody. It's not about you. You were just easy.
You're just...
because you had a Palantir.
Yeah.
And there is one thing that the line that they change when he says, better to die sooner than later, for die we must, in the movie, in the book, he is responding to one of his a messenger from like lower in the city. He says, "The first circle of the city is burning, Lord. What are your commands? You are still Lord and Steward. Not all will follow Mithrandir," meaning Gandalf. "Men are flying from the walls and leaving them unmanned. Why? Why do the fools fly?" said Denethor. "Better to burn sooner than late, for burn we must." And so this is when he's like starting to be like send orders to build his pyre, and I'm like, saying burn just sounds even more unhinged than to die.
Yeah.
Personally, a little bit of Game of Thrones vibes, but obviously Tolkien did it first. There's no dragon, but you get it. He's just like, I'm gonna set my son and myself on fire. Cool. He releases Pippin from his service a little bit earlier in the book, but I think it works the way that they play it out in the movie. I just feel like Denethor is unhinged, and he feels unhinged in the movie and the book in a similar fashion, you know?
Yeah.
And Pippin is just like, what? Like when he says, and then you also have like the cut character of Baragond, who is one of the other captains or soldiers that Pippin met early on when he first entered the service of Denethor, and he runs into him when he is leaving the basically like the halls of the dead, like the place where they put all the tombs of the kings, but they're gonna build a pyre for Denethor and Faramir, and he's like, Aragorn, do not let anybody set these people on fire. And he's like, I'm not supposed to go in there. Like, there's rules. And he's like, okay, well, either you stick to your stupid rules or you try to save your boy, Faramir.
That's such a Pippin thing as well.
Yeah. I love it that he's finally able to, like, he's like, oh my gosh. Pippin is kind of alone for the first time in a while. And things are just, like, straight up chaos for him. I feel like Merry has it easier at this point, even.
Yeah.
He might be not later, but right now, Merry's okay. And Pippin is just like, we're under attack. Like, Gandalf is busy. It's just up to me to save this guy. And so he's gotta trot down and find Gandalf, who is obviously leading the fray. And so we come to the part where Gandalf has his little standoff with the Witch King. And I love the way it is described in the book. And I think it's, honestly, if for real, it's pretty close as dialogue wise in the movie, where you've got the things that they say to each other, like about how going back to the abyss and the Witch King telling Gandalf to die now. But I do think it is slightly different in how he enters, and I do like it because you see, like we just talked about how he's leading from the rear, but he shows up when they've got Grond, our nice fancy battering ram that they've made to open the gates to Minas Tirith. It's shaped like a wolf's head. He's got like fire in his mouth. He looks very cool in the movie. Fun fact, Grond is the name of Melkor's hammer that he used to fuck people up in the Silmarillion. So Sauron's like, love that name. Let's bring it back.
Homage.
So Grond is now a battering ram rather than a hammer, but sure. And it is said to have had spells of ruin on it. And so I think the Witch King clearly like plays a part in how those spells work, because he does his like horrible sound that the ring wraiths make 3 times, and each time Grond hits the door 3 times. And then it bursts asunder as if stricken by some blasting spell. So I feel like he probably did some magic, some sorcery. He is the Witch King. And then he walks in to the city. It literally says he's walking over dead bodies. He's on a horse, and he's not on a fell beast at this time. He's on a horse, one of like the horses from Mordor. The way it describes him walking in, it says, "In rode the Lord of the Nazgul, under the archway that no enemy ever yet had passed, and all fled before his face." all save one. There, waiting, silent and still, in the spaces before the gate, sat Gandalf upon Shadowfax. Shadowfax, who alone among the free horses of the earth endured the terror, unmoving, steadfast as a graven image in Rathdinan. And Rathdinan is like the name of the road where all the dead kings are, where Faramir is about to be burned. So it's like cemetery, graven image. He's like a stone statue. He's not moving an inch. And so, like we talked about, the dialogue is very similar, like the "you cannot enter here, go back to the abyss prepared for you." But before the Witch King responds, it says, "The Black Rider flung back his hood, and behold, he had a kingly crown, and yet upon no head visible was it set. The red fires shone between it, and the mantled shoulders vast and dark. From a mouth unseen there came a deadly laughter." And he's like, "Old fool, this is my hour. Do you not know death when you see it?" And I'm like, ooh, spoopy. I'm just like, this would be good animated, I feel like. She's got the head, or you got the crown, but I mean, we've talked about how a wraith works. They don't have a physical body really anymore. Like, they can put on clothes that give them a shape, but they are so, they've like wasted away until they're basically only in the spirit realm now. Not so much the physical, but obviously enough to like kind of hold it. I don't know. They're very spoopy. They're very ghosty. So he's got a crown, and you can just see all the devastation on there. And Gandalf doesn't even flinch, but in the movie, he they have him break his staff, and he falls off Shadowfax. But no, like, they're just both sitting there like, okay, bring it. You show us what you got. But at that moment, away behind the courtyard, there's a cock crows, and then, as if in answer, horns, and Rohan had come at last, and that's how the chapter ends, and it's so good. So that's basically exactly the moment that I stopped watching the movie, is when you hear the horns, but you haven't turned to see the Rohirrim yet.
That description of Gandalf and the Witch King, with the whole black and white, reminds me of like chess queens just facing off across the board.
Yeah. And I think we've made references to chess. I think it's Baragond in the book and Gandalf in the movie, where it's like the board is set.
Oh yeah.
So literally, they're about to make their moves. And it's interesting. I just wish, I'm like, why do you have to make Gandalf fall over and like break his staff in the movie? He's such a badass.
Because Peter is adding drama everywhere except where I want it.
Yeah. Why is that true? So yeah, I mean, any thoughts about the Witch King, Anna, or like the standoff between?
I mean, like, I always want more Witch King. I am very disappointed that that full sequence, couldn't have been in the movie.
I would have loved for him to walk instead of flying up on his. Like, I get it. You probably spent a good chunk of money on your fancy fell beast.
Yeah,
but
I do like the fell beast too. Like, I want to see more of that.
They're around. They've been doing things, But I think it would have been really cool to see him. Like, I know that they've kind of, again, Peter amplifies everything, so they've already kind of like are retreating from the first circle, and they could even still do that. But when Grond opens that door, like, they have it be a troll thing, but I think it should just burst open, and like he basically kind of puts a spell on everybody too, to where like none of the soldiers are able to like move, and they drop their weapon, and they're just kind of like there. Yeah, exactly. And I would have loved for him to do that and like just walk in and like as if he's like, what are you gonna do, and Gandalf is like, sasses him, and he's like, go back to the abyss. He's like, no, thank you, didn't order any of this. And then he has the, and also does he have a sword that with flames running down the blade? I don't remember that in the movie. You think I would have written it down, but I didn't. I literally just watched it. I don't remember if he actually does that, but just the whole visual of them, like, not, they're both kind of like calling each other's bluff, I feel like.
They're fronting each other.
Because, like, from previous dialogue, like, Gandalf is kind of worried about the Witch King. Like, the Witch King isn't a Maya, obviously. Like, he's not Gandalf's type of being. Like, Sauron technically is. But he has had a lot of time to be doing a lot of evil things. And so I think Gandalf is kind of worried about it. But I love that he says that previously, but then when it's time, he is unflinching. He does not move, is what it says. He's just like, he's not unfazed, trying to be unfazed, Who knows what would have happened if, Rohan hadn't shown up right at that moment, but Rohan forever. They're the best. But that's how the chapter ends. And, that's where my notes end as well. I know we've been talking for a little bit, but
just a little bit.
Any final thoughts on this one? I think I'm probably gonna have to. I feel like just the way the movie is doing it, we're definitely gonna get to the Ride of the Rohirrim next time. Obviously, we're hearing them show up in this last scene, and the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, which is, the Ride of the Rohirrim is something that's largely cut out of the movie. It's how they get around the orcs to make it to the Pelennor Fields, and the Battle of the Pelennor Fields is obviously what's about to happen right now in the movie. And I'm assuming that we're probably also going to see some more of Frodo and Sam, but
they're getting close, right?
They're getting pretty close, but their chapters don't come until a little bit into Return of the King, so we might have to do some rearranging again. But otherwise, that's what we're going to see next time.
Sounds good.
So, thank you both so much for being here. Obviously, if you have any additional thoughts, let me know, and we'll bring everyone back to talk more Frodo and Sam, because we're getting down to the wire. Like, things are happening,
The moment.
So, Edith, do you want to let people know where they can find you or what you've got going on?
I'm on TikTok as Hobbit Hot Takes. I haven't been very active, but I have a lot of videos about Lord of the Rings and a few videos on YouTube as well. That's it.
Perfect. Yeah, you have some incredibly wonderful takes about Frodo and Sam. So
Thanks.
Feel free to come back anytime we talk about them.
So you have lots of passions about it. I can tell.
For sure, yeah.
They're the best. The best, Anna.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not trying to.
Okay, awesome. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you soon.